Welcome to Starseed Goddess podcast. And today we have a beautiful guest, Gabrielle Pimstone, to talk about sacred geometry. Welcome, Gabrielle.
Oh, thank you so much, Elise. It's wonderful to be here. You're in a short sleeve top. I'm in winter in Australia, but I guess we're connecting over the airwaves. So it's great to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Likewise, as I was sharing with Gabriel earlier, I was just literally thinking, how great will it be if someone come into the show to talk about sacred geometry? It was a fleeting thought, and I went to sleep. And in less than 12 hours, I think I woke up to a message from Gabrielle saying she wanted to be on the show to talk about sacred geometry. And I was like, yes, universe, now you're listening and now we are talking. So
Yes.
just sharing this for all of you out there, knowing that when your desire comes from that purest heart of service and just pure joy, it is delivered. However, gotta listen and trust and take action on it. And here we are taking action on our individual and collective yeses and creating this magic for all of you listeners here. So when we talk about sacred geometry, most people probably, the first thing that came into their mind is like
Yeah.
flower of life, things like that. And that is one, but I'm pretty sure there are like so much more than what we know of than just beautiful art, if you may. So let's start by sharing with us, Gabrielle, what is sacred geometry exactly?
That's great. And I'm happy to answer that. I just want to mention it's interesting you refer to the flower of life because that's my specific sacred geometry. I downloaded it and I use it all the time. I'm happy to share that at a later point.
Hmm.
But I think your question's great because we're getting back to basics. And the way that I explain sacred geometry, you're right, it's more than just pretty shapes. But what you see is if you go through nature, and you actually look at nature, you'll find these they are pretty, but they're perfectly proportioned geometric shapes and patterns. They're patterns of energy. And they're found everywhere in nature. They're also found in the human body. So our DNA is a sphere, our DNA is an octahedron, but we think of it as a spiral. Our cells are spherical, they're spheres. And if you look around nature, you'll see hexagons in, honeycomb. If you look into the center of a flower petal, you'll see these incredible concentric circles. Snowflakes are another example.
Mhm.
And they're everywhere, and it's not random. There's a reason that they're everywhere. The astronomer Galileo once referred to sacred geometry as the alphabet used by God to design the universe. And I think that's just so beautiful. So when you look at them, you'll see that each one of them has got these divine proportions, and each one houses a specific energetic frequency. And so we can use them for different things. Some sacred geometries have a particular frequency that can be used for healing physical ailments. Others have got a specific frequency that allow us to time travel and clear across timelines. Others hold the vibration of pure unconditional love, which is they're wonderful to use for people who are struggling in relationships or with self-love. So they've got this specific frequency that allows us to do different things with them. And, some geometries are very simple, like I guess the simplest version of a geometry I've already mentioned is a sphere or a pyramid structure. But you've already mentioned an advanced sacred geometry like the flower of life, where the patterns are more complex and there are multi-geometries in them. So yeah, so that's how I understand sacred geometry to be and how we use it.
Beautiful, Gabriel.
Mhm.
And I love how you refer to snowflakes because that is something that most of us will have an immediate visual association on how that looks like. Is that perfect symmetry that almost like intuitively, this has to come from God because of its perfection and its harmony and its balance. It's just like
Yes.
magnificent.
Yes,
And
that's right. They've
yes.
got different qualities. And when you start working with them and you start getting familiar with them, for me personally, each one's got a different color. Each one's got a different sensation and feel. And they are very, very potent. So yeah, so that's they have got like a unique signature.
How do you first came about this, and how do you started working with them?
Well, I didn't know what sacred geometry was at all. I was stuck in my life. I was depressed. I was anxious. I was looking to change careers, but I didn't know how to. I was in a, senior leadership role in big bank, and it was 2020, and I was looking for a modality that could help me really shift out of this for good. And I didn't know where to go. And I started, thinking about it. What do I do? How do I get unstuck? And then a few days later, talking about synchronicity, an advert popped up in my Instagram feed. And there was this guy that was talking about a 3-day long weekend workshop, very cheap. I think it was $10, $20. And he started talking about energy. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to sign up for this 3-day workshop because for selfish reasons, I can't, I need to get out of this rut. And I joined, and what he spoke about was really captivating. He didn't speak about sacred geometry much, but I signed up, and I signed up for his program. He landed up being my teacher for 18 months. And when we started the program, he started talking about sacred geometry, and I was thinking, what is this? What have I signed up for? I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. I didn't care what it was at the time. I just wanted to feel better, right? And then as I started really experiencing sacred geometries and working with them, and it was graduated, starting with simple ones and then moving up, I started feeling my energetic capacity expand. My gifts, my spiritual gifts started turning on, and magic started to happen. And so, I really just by chance, I guess, stumbled upon it, and it revealed itself to me. It's beautiful.
So all of you, if you stumble upon this podcast by chance, maybe it's not just a coincidence after all. There is a message here, however you want to perceive it, but be open to it with a curious mind. So we talk about what is sacred geometry and how you chance upon it. So you were mentioning advanced sacred geometry, and when you say advanced, if I understand correctly, you are referring to the structure as to how it is more complicated. That's what you mean by advanced, am I right?
Yes, and it's more potent. So when you're starting to learn about this, you actually can't use those sacred geometries when you first start out because you don't have the energetic capacity to do that. It would probably make you jittery, you'd probably stop sleeping, so it's a graduated process. But I'll give you an example of an advanced sacred geometry. One that I work with is the Sri Yantra. I'm not sure if it's a beautiful, it's got so much in it. It's got, I've actually never worked it out.
I love that one.
I love it as well, but it's got multiple geometries. It's got geometry within geometry, and it is an incredibly potent sacred geometry. It houses potent frequency. And so that would just be an example. Another one is the flower of life. Multiple geometries, very intricate patterns. And the challenge when you're starting out working with this is you've got to familiarize yourself with the shape, with the pattern. And now I don't, I can literally just, by intention, it's around me. But in the beginning, you've got to learn to feel into it, and that you've got to become accustomed to what the pattern is. But actually, they're beautiful. And yeah, and very unique. And the way that they work, or the way that I use them, is almost like an adapter. So when you know that when we're doing healing, we are channeling very potent light from source and energy. And as humans, if we were to house the energy without geometry, we'd get very, very tired. And I'm not even sure that we could house it because we just don't have that capacity. Sacred geometries, when we work with them, they do the work for us. They house the energy for us. They act as an adapter. So you don't have to house it. The sacred geometry does it for you. And there are a number of benefits. The one, as I said, is you've got, more in your tank, you don't get so tired. But that also means more love and more light can come to you because that's stuff that you wouldn't be able to channel on your own. So they perform that function. That's how I use them. They allow me to do deeper healings and deeper activations with my clients.
That's beautiful. I love that sharing, and that is a sharing coming from a perspective of someone who actually does energy work for clients as well. And the way I see it when you share with me, it sounded to me that it is a similar way to use it, in the sense that some people use crystal to house the energy, and some people have a altar or whatever similar props, if you may, that they
Yes.
use to help to
Yes.
house it, so that we are not relying on our physical body, but letting the divine do the work. And that explanation is spot on, because I'm pretty sure a lot of you who are listening might actually be an energy healer yourself, and you're wondering, how can I use it beyond just my personal practice? You've just got your answer there. So that is how we can use it to support our practice in terms of
Yes.
anchoring and holding energy. Now, how can we use it specifically to help the clients, or maybe as a recipient, as a client? How does it work in helping healing or awakening? So for example, you were saying one of them can be used for timeline, you were saying earlier. So can you explain a little how that works? And yeah.
Look, I can explain in broad terms. I'm not going to go into the specifics.
Yes.
The main reason I won't go into specifics is I don't want people trying stuff when they're not ready for it. That's the main reason. But there are a couple of ways you do it. So I just want to write down something so that I don't forget. So what I do is I stack different sacred geometries. I use different geometries, and sometimes when you combine geometries, there are two specific geometries that I combine, and when I combine them, it actually opens up a portal. That's how it works. And when it opens up that portal, that allows you to read energy across the timeline, all the way back, childhood, gestation, and beyond. I've got geometry, and which I couple with breath work, because breath work, breathing also, specific sequences of breathing, geometric breathing opens up portals as well. There's a particular sequence that I use that opens up the karmic grid. For someone wanting to release something, that's karmic, you've got to go to that place, that realm. And so it's a combination of using different geometries, combining that with breath work. And then there are also sequences that I use. So you do this, then you do that, and you combine this with that. Then you stop doing that, then you combine that with this. And so it's also sequences. That's another really important way that we use geometries. So the combination of different geometries in a sequence with specific geometric breathing does what it needs to do. And then there are certain geometries you can use that you actually don't need to open portals. You can just use them for what they're intended, which is, there's a particular geometry that I use that is fabulous for total forgiveness. And that's all I need to use. I don't need to use it with anything else. Well, I use that, and I use light. I bring light in as well. That particular geometry responds particularly well to light. So that's another. So sometimes geometries need light to channel through them, and that's another way of using them. Does that answer your question?
Totally. Yes, it's
Great,
exactly
great.
what I was asking, that, like it sounded to me that it can be used for different purpose, and obviously there is a sequence and combination behind each purpose that a practitioner who is knowledgeable in the sacred geometry will be able to create something specific to the person depending on what they need. And that is such a beautiful work that you are doing. And I'm pretty sure it is so potent, because anything that works with opening portal with it is just so potent. And what I'm curious to know though is, as I was sharing earlier at the beginning, right? Like a lot of people immediately thought about like the pretty shape, like flower of life, Metatron cube, seed of life, whatever, And especially if you have ever lived in a place like Bali, which I was staying for 3 years, it was like everywhere. But the thing is, like, did people understand is sacred geometry, or is it just a pretty shape? Or, I mean, people even have it on their body as a tattoo. And I'm pretty sure they know it's sacred geometry, but how are they using it and what are they using it for? Like, I won't know, only they know. But the reason I brought this up was because it is pretty commercialized, I would say. Like, you see it printed in t-shirt everywhere. So I just want to point this out, because you were saying that, if someone is not able to host the energy. So for example, I'm someone who is really new in a spiritual journey. I'm just learn how to meditate, don't really understand energy work. And I see this pretty flower of life and I have it tattooed in my body.
Yes.
Then what happened?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I've never been asked that question, but when you're saying it, and you're right, it's become very, very commercialized. And I love the Metatron cube as well, by the way. I use it a lot. But each sacred geometry has a divine intelligence of its own. So it's very difficult to use them with the wrong intention, if that makes sense, because they're not going to do things that are not in the highest good of all. They're sacred, they are incredibly high vibrational, I mean, beyond high vibrational, and they have this innate intelligence. So anyone can wear it on a t-shirt or tattoo, but it's not going to be used for malevolent purposes. It never is going to go there. Its intelligence will always stop that. Like if I decided one day that I was going to use the Metatron cube to, argument's sake, to create chaos in weather patterns. I mean, that's a stupid example. Like it wouldn't do that for me. It just wouldn't cooperate. It's not designed for that purpose in mind. But you're raising a really important point, because I was talking about people being ready for sacred geometry, and it's a graduated process. Some of that is having the expanded energetic capacity to house these geometries, but the other part of it is intent, and you've got to, I don't teach sacred geometry on podcasts because I don't know who's listening. I teach it to people who are in a structured coaching program with me, who I trust and I know are ready for it from all the angles. And
love that. So it is obviously intention. And I really love how you mentioned that particular geometry is called sacred for a reason. So it's coded in love and light, that, even if you want to misuse it, it's not coded for it. It's not going to respond, because that's not the coding. And
exactly.
And I guess the only difference between someone who is more conscious than someone that is not is probably just how deep they can go when they work with it, how much more benefits they can experience within that time. But even then, it is always for the highest good of all. And
Yes.
the only thing
Yes.
I could imagine that might happen, not necessarily means it's a bad thing, but it just be something that I observe in a lot of people who are on the journey, you know, even after being on the journey for a long time, it's not necessarily people who are new, is that people have challenged being grounded. So I guess, you know, if they are not ready with the sacred geometry and they try to work with 5 of them for whatever reason, and maybe have it all over their room because more is better, whatever they might think it is, they might feel ungrounded. And if they are not, you know, aware of that, then it might cause them to feel, like you were saying, jittery and things like that.
Yeah.
So that might just be something to let our listeners have an awareness of, so that if they decide to work with it in whatever way they choose to, then, you know, just be conscious of that. And
Be
you were
very
saying
conscious.
that
Yeah.
flower of life is your chosen geometry. What do you mean by that? Does everyone have a chosen geometry? How do you choose one for yourself?
Well, you don't choose it. It chooses you. You download it. You channel it. It comes in a dream. It comes in, whatever, however you channel information. And so for me, I had a really interesting experience because I was almost towards the end of my 18-month journey in this course. I was in my level 3, and we had been taught at the end of level 2. I remember there was a bonus lesson on how to download your signature sacred geometry. And it just didn't work for me. I did the activity, I did the exercise, and then I gave up. And in level 3, I went halfway through level 3, I went to America to the live event. There was a live event, and we did it. It was a hybrid. If you could go, it was live. Otherwise, it was also virtual. So I'd only ever done it virtually, but I thought, I'm coming to the end of this program. I want to meet all these wonderful people I've been studying with. So off I go to Colorado, and the retreat center's on sacred land. And I was told this, but then I experienced it. So what happened was, day 1, I went down. There's this beautiful labyrinth on the land. It's actually houses feminine energy. And I walked it. And I took some selfies, and then I got back to the lodge and I looked at my selfies, and there was this perfect golden disc by my throat chakra. And you can see when you zoom in, it's a ball of energy. And I obviously hadn't seen it with my eyes at that point, but there it was in a picture, and it was unmistakable. It wasn't one of those, green dots you see on iPhones. It was a ball of energy. Next day, I'd go down to the same place, because I went every day down to that labyrinth, and I take photos. I actually forgot about that. And the next thing is, I see, when I look back at my photos, kind of a golden ball, but it's starting to look a little bit greenish. The next day, I was at another vortex on the land with a number of people, took photos. And then in the photo, the sphere had changed. It was starting to show me some geometric patterns. On day 4, the geometric patterns were now the flower of life. And by day 5, I saw it with my own eyes, not just behind the camera, and it was dancing. And I've got a video, and it looks like, almost like it's unbelievable, like a 3D structure of the flower of life. And I took it to my teacher. We came into the class later that day. We had a Q&A to wrap up, and I said, is this the flower of life? He said, yes. And so it revealed itself to me. And everyone was so excited because this was happening. So that's how it came to me. For other people, if they're channelers, they might channel something. You start to see a particular geometric shape in your third eye when you close your eyes or when you meditate. That's sometimes how it reveals itself. But I had a really dramatic reveal, and it came after a lot of frustration because other people were getting their sacred geometry. I wasn't. And now suddenly it came to me in a spectacular way. And I've got all the videos and all the photos. It's magnificent.
Oh, I love that story. It's like,
Mm,
wow, it's
yeah.
it's interesting like how you were frustrated, but then that was because there is something even better than what you
Yes.
expected. I'm pretty sure you were not expecting something like that because a lot of times we tend to see things like in our mind and then we might question if it's real. And for you to see it in such a tangible way in camera, like there is a proof, it's almost like you cannot miss this one.
And then I saw it with my eyes, and I was with somebody, and she couldn't see it. I could see it, so I took a video of it.
Hmm.
It's phenomenal. You're right. I mean, again, at the meta principle you're talking about is you never know. There's something around patience. When things aren't coming to you immediately, divine timing is very real. Like it'll reveal itself when it's meant to reveal itself to you. I think that was the case when it came to sacred geometry and me.
Mm. Really love it. And yeah, it's just so profound because as I said, like people just see it as that pretty shape, but when we have this conversation today, we get to learn there's so much more to it that is crazy, the type of things we can do with this sacred geometry.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know, assuming someone learn how to do it and they have a good intention and everything like that, is sacred geometry something that people can create, or is it like an existing template that is already known, like the famous ones, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you can, I've not created my own, but I know people for whom geometries have been downloaded and they've tried Googling it and they can't find it anywhere. So I guess you
Mm.
can create your own. I mean, yeah, it can be created for you specifically. I think in principle, that's right. I've seen it happen with a number of people I know. It just hasn't been for me. The one that came to me was a well-known one, which was the flower of life. But yeah, I mean, certainly people I know have shapes and patterns have come to them and they can't find it anywhere. And they don't know what to call it, but they know it's their geometry.
They probably channel a
Yeah,
template from source that
from
that
source.
is that is less famous, but it doesn't mean it's not
Correct.
there.
Correct. I imagine you're channeling some template. I don't think you're making your own geometry up. It's coming to you and it's being downloaded for you from somewhere. But as you're saying, sometimes the source, it's just not well known, but it does exist in some realm. It's just, and that becomes your signature geometry. When I say signature geometry, for me personally, since I downloaded the Flower of Life, I use it in a lot of my healings, not all of them, but a lot of them. And sometimes, last Sunday I was early for my yoga and I sat in the studio and I put myself in the Flower of Life and I did some things with it because I was feeling quite anxious for some reason. And so just kind of I did a little sequence using, I hadn't been taught it, but using this particular geometry, and it kind of just calmed me down because there's a vibration clearly in that geometry that resonates with me, that I take in. And yeah, I use it all the time.
Mm. So for those of you, like who for those people who wants to perhaps start working with sacred geometry without necessarily going into too much details, how can they decide which one? I know you were saying the geometry chose them, but is there like a common explanation as to flower of life is used for this and
Yeah.
another geometry is used for that? Like, of course, it does more than what it is, but is there like a general explanation to that?
Yes. I mean, I think everyone's going to give you different explanations, but what I've learned very specific ones. The flower of life is used for X. The Metatron's cube is used for Y. The Sri Yantra is used for Z. Yes, they have very specific ones. But if you're starting out and you don't have a background in this and you're really new to it, you can use simple sacred geometries very easily. And a particularly useful way of using them is to protect your energy. So anyone can put themselves in a sphere and set the intention that only energy of love and light can enter the geometry and get into your energetic field. Anyone can put themselves in a pyramid structure around them, and again, use that for the purpose of protecting their energy. So anyone can do that. And I would recommend that you start playing around with those two geometries with setting the intention that they are being used to protect your energy from low vibrational energy out there. You can do that. You can do that before you go to sleep. It's lovely to do that just before sleep, because when we're sleeping, our guard is down, and we do a lot of healing. And some people think, we can travel in our sleep state, dream state. So you can, before you go to sleep at night, just put yourself in a sphere or in a pyramid structure and set the intention that as you sleep, only energy of love and light can come to you. And the way, when I say put yourself in it, I mean, you can either just in your mind's eye imagine you're sitting in a sphere, or you're sitting in a pyramid, or you can build it like I'm doing. You can physically trace it, or you can kind of do the pyramid that way. So that's what I mean, and that anyone can do, and those are very, very powerful. You can play around with that just before you're about to go into a difficult meeting or have a difficult conversation with someone. You can do it if you're having negative thoughts about someone. There's so many instances that you can protect your energy with simple sacred geometry. Try it. And what I would recommend you do is, people listening to this, once you're in the geometry, sit in it and feel what it feels like to have an energetic shield around you. And that gets you to really start feeling into geometry and experiencing the energy of it.
That's such a practical and useful tips that everyone can take away. And it really brings awareness, because we are pretty familiar with bubble of light, but we might not necessarily think that is a sacred geometry, now that you mentioned. Because most meditation has that, right? See yourself in this beautiful bubble of light, which is the sphere essentially. And yeah, you can trace the pyramid, beautiful, use it for protection, for grounding, something basic, fundamental, and very much needed. And then when you feel you're ready, you can proceed to deeper or advanced geometry like flower of life or more. And even work with a practitioner like Gabrielle for deeper healing to open up your portal. Another thing that I found amazing that you just said earlier was so important is to experience it. Because it's not about what shape you're working with, and it's not even necessarily just because it's more advanced means it's better. What is important is your personal experience and even your personal connection to it. So even if you allow yourself to feel into that connection with that pyramid or that sphere, that is the coding that we are talking about, that you are coded to that geometry. You receive the exact template, exact activation and healing that you need. And when you are ready, maybe you will start seeing your geometry in camera or in whatever shape, way, or form that is meant for you to start revealing yourself to you.
Yes. It takes quite a bit of expansion to get there, but certainly, the idea of what sensing and feeling, it's a spiritual sense. Some of us are clairaudient channels, but they're different way of channeling. Some people, I used to be clairaudient much more than I am now. I am more clairsentient. That's developed in a huge way. So I can feel into things, including geometries. And that's because I sat under a pyramid when I started in my mind's eye, and I breathed and I experienced and I had the experience. I didn't just do didn't just do the instructions, I had the experience of it. You're right when you say that's the difference between, going through the motions and getting the codes and absorbing the lesson and absorbing the structure and absorbing the energy that you're supposed to get.
That is such an important point, because when we talk about sacred geometry, we talk about the shape, and then we might naturally think it has to be seen. But you are saying it doesn't necessarily need to be seen, because we do have other clairaudience, clairsentience, and claircognizance, all those clairs that we can tap on as a way to work with geometry. So does it mean we don't necessarily need to know the shape exactly then, especially people who are not clairvoyant, for example?
Well, as I said, the way that I learned geometry was by actually familiarizing myself with the shape, because what that does is it stimulates the other senses. You can see the flower of life or whatever it is. You can see the Sri Yantra, and then it kind of gives a texture when you start working with it. Like for me, when I really became so familiar that I could build it in a second, suddenly the color started coming to me. Suddenly it started feeling that there was a particular like physical almost or energetic feel about it. But I think that if you use your sense of sight initially, it can be very powerful to activate the experience of it, because then when you're working with it, you can sense into it so much better. That's worked for me. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yes.
Okay.
So it is all personal, intimate journey. So
Yeah.
start working with it in whatever way you feel called to, starting from the simple one, like building the sphere and the pyramid, and then start to see what it brings you. And from our conversation today, what I found really beautiful is that it seems that sacred geometry taught us so many things, like we started the conversation talking about the synchronicity, and then also your experience about patience, right? And trusting the process and really allowing things to come true. There is so much activation already happening just by talking about it. So imagine when you start working with it on a deeper level. So Gabrielle, can you share with us more about how people can work with you deeper with regards to sacred geometry and where they can find you? I mean, I'll drop the link, but it would be great if you can share a little bit.
Well, there are two ways that you can work with me. You can either work with me as in a healing space where I do the work for you, and you come to me with an issue. I do healings and I've got packages, and then we do a bit of a debrief after each healing, and you go away and you come back and we go deeper. We could do it that way. But if you want to learn sacred geometry, come into one of my coaching packages, one of my coaching programs, because there you're going to get the benefit of me healing you, but I'm also going to be teaching you in a very structured way how to do it for yourself. I've got, short courses as well. I've actually got a short course on how to protect your energy. I've got a short course on how to clear energetic blocks from your chakras. So those are simpler ways and certainly cheaper ways to do it. So connect with me, go onto my website, connect with me on Instagram. I'm very active there. And, that's the way, I think the best way to get hold of me.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Gabrielle. And for all of you here who are listening or watching, share with us if something comes true, maybe something pop up in your mind, or maybe a sacred geometry pop in your mind as you listen to this. Feel free to reach out to Gabrielle or myself on Instagram. It's by our name, the same handle there, Gabrielle Pimstone or Alice Hadi. And we will see you around. Thank you, Gabrielle.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful chat. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.